Rain poured over the quiet streets just after sunset as Ethan Carter, a hard-working single father, hurried home after finishing another exhausting shift as a delivery driver. Every minute mattered because his 8-year-old son, Noah, was waiting at home with a neighbor. Bills were piling up, sleep had become a luxury, and life rarely offered Ethan a break. As he cut through a small city park to save time, he noticed a tiny figure sitting alone on a soaked wooden bench. A little girl, no older than 6, hugged a worn teddy bear while tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks. She looked frightened, yet strangely calm, as if she had already cried herself empty. Ethan immediately knelt beside her. "Hey, sweetheart, where are your parents?" he asked gently. The little girl looked up with trembling blue eyes. "My mommy can't find me," she whispered. "Everyone keeps walking away." Ethan wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and offered her a bottle of water from his bag. He knew better than to leave a frightened child alone. After calling the police, he stayed with her, telling funny stories about Noah until she smiled for the first time. She said her name was Lily but couldn't remember her home address. The only thing she repeated was, "Mommy always says she'll never stop looking for me." 20 minutes later, flashing police lights filled the park. Officers thanked Ethan and began checking missing person reports. Suddenly, the sound of black SUVs rushing toward the entrance echoed through the streets. Security guards stepped out first, followed by a woman whose face showed absolute panic. She wore an elegant coat soaked by the rain, yet she ignored everything except the little girl. "Mommy!" Lily screamed. The woman ran across the grass and wrapped Lily in the tightest embrace imaginable. Tears streamed down both their faces as photographers and security staff watched in silence. Ethan quietly stepped back, relieved the child was safe. He expected a simple thank you before returning to his own difficult life. Instead, the woman slowly approached him. "My name is Victoria Lawson," she said softly. "I don't know how to thank you. Lily is my entire world." Ethan recognized the name instantly. Victoria Lawson was one of the youngest billionaire CEOs in the country, known for building a technology empire worth billions of dollars. Yet at that moment, she looked nothing like a powerful executive. She looked like nothing more than a terrified mother who had nearly lost her daughter. Ethan smiled politely. Any parent would have done the same. Victoria stared at him for several seconds before her expression suddenly changed. Her hands began shaking. She looked from Ethan's face to the old silver bracelet on his wrist. "Where did you get that bracelet?" she asked quietly. Ethan glanced down. "I've had it since I was a teenager. It belonged to my late mother." Victoria's eyes filled with tears once again. "That's impossible," she whispered. Confused, Ethan frowned. Victoria reached into her purse and removed an old photograph protected inside a plastic sleeve. It showed 2 laughing teenagers wearing identical silver bracelets. "The boy in this picture," she said, barely able to speak, "was my older brother Daniel." Ethan looked closely at the faded image. His heart nearly stopped. The boy looked exactly like him. Victoria swallowed hard. "My brother disappeared 18 years ago after a terrible accident separated our family. We searched everywhere. The police eventually declared him dead." Ethan felt dizzy. "My mother, she adopted me after finding me alone near a bus station," he said slowly. "She told me I had lost my memory after an accident. We never found any records." Victoria covered her mouth as realization overwhelmed her. "You aren't a stranger," she whispered through tears. "You're my brother." Silence surrounded them as rain continued falling. Lily looked between them with innocent curiosity before taking Ethan's hand. "So, you're my uncle?" she asked with a hopeful smile. For the first time in years, Ethan couldn't hold back his own tears. He nodded slowly. Victoria embraced him tightly while police officers quietly stepped away, giving the family the privacy they deserved. Ethan had spent years believing he was completely alone in the world, raising his son through endless sacrifices and heartbreak. Yet because he had stopped to help one frightened little girl, he had unknowingly found the family he thought had been lost forever. Sometimes the greatest miracles don't arrive through wealth or success. They begin with one simple act of kindness, and reveal a truth powerful enough to change an entire lifetime. The following morning, Ethan barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faded photograph, the matching bracelet, and Victoria's tearful face as she called him her brother. It felt impossible. For 18 years, he had believed he was alone in the world. Now, everything he thought he knew about his past had been turned upside down. Victoria insisted they meet at her family's estate with lawyers, doctors, and a private investigator who had spent years searching for Daniel. Ethan arrived with Noah by his side, unsure whether to believe any of it. Noah squeezed his father's hand tightly. "Dad, are we really meeting our family today?" he whispered. Ethan smiled nervously. "I hope so, buddy." As soon as they stepped inside the mansion, Lily came running down the hallway. "Uncle Ethan," she shouted, throwing her arms around him. Noah laughed as Lily grabbed his hand too. "This is my cousin now," she proudly announced. Watching the children bond so naturally filled the room with warmth that no amount of luxury could buy. Victoria welcomed them with tears in her eyes. On the dining table lay old family albums, newspaper clippings, and police reports documenting the day her brother disappeared. Every page told the same heartbreaking story. Their parents had died in a highway accident during a violent storm. Rescue teams found Victoria, but Daniel had vanished before emergency workers arrived. Months of searching led nowhere. The private investigator gently pushed another file toward Ethan. "Your adoptive mother never kidnapped you," he explained. "She found you wandering alone several miles from the crash site. You had severe head injuries and couldn't remember your name. She reported finding you, but due to communication failures and mistakes in the investigation at that time, your identity was never connected to the Lawson family." Ethan lowered his head as emotions overwhelmed him. "My mother always treated me with love," he said quietly. "She never wanted to replace anyone. She simply didn't know." Victoria reached across the table and held his hand. "Then she gave me my brother back," she replied softly. "I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful to her." A week later, DNA results finally arrived. Everyone gathered in Victoria's office, too nervous to speak. The doctor smiled before opening the report. "The results are conclusive," he announced. "There is a 99.99% probability that Ethan Carter is Daniel Lawson." Victoria burst into tears. Lily screamed with excitement. Even Noah, who barely understood the science, hugged his father tightly. "You have a sister now," he laughed. "And you," Victoria said while kneeling beside Noah, "have an aunt, and a cousin who already thinks you're her best friend." For the first time since becoming a single father, Ethan felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. He wasn't carrying life's burdens alone anymore. A few days later, Victoria invited Ethan to the headquarters of Lawson Technologies. Thousands of employees gathered in the main auditorium, expecting a routine company announcement. Instead, Victoria stepped onto the stage beside Ethan. "For years," she began, "I believed I had lost the only brother I ever had. Today, because of one extraordinary act of kindness, I have the privilege of introducing him to all of you." The audience erupted into applause. Ethan felt uncomfortable with the attention, but Victoria smiled proudly. "My brother didn't build billion-dollar companies," she continued. "He built something far more valuable. He raised a wonderful son alone, worked honestly every single day, and stopped to help a frightened little girl without expecting anything in return. That is the kind of man our family is proud to call one of our own." The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Reporters immediately surrounded Ethan afterward, asking if he planned to take a leadership role in the family business. He surprised everyone with his answer. I don't need a fancy title, Ethan said with a smile. I've spent my whole life earning everything through hard work. If I join the company, it'll be because I can contribute, not because my last name suddenly changed. Victoria couldn't have looked prouder. Later that evening, as the family shared dinner together, Noah quietly looked around the table filled with laughter. "Dad," he whispered, "our family got really big. Really fast." Ethan smiled, placing an arm around his son. "Sometimes," he said, looking at Victoria and Lily, "life gives you back everything you thought you'd lost, when you've almost stopped believing miracles can happen." 3 months passed, and Ethan's life changed in ways he never imagined. Yet despite discovering he was Daniel Lawson and becoming part of one of the wealthiest families in the country, he refused to let money define him. Every morning, he still packed Noah's school lunch, walked him to the bus stop, and insisted on living in the same modest house until he felt ready for a new chapter. Victoria admired him even more because of it. One afternoon, she invited Ethan to lunch at the company's rooftop garden. "I've been thinking," she began. "Our parents always believed success meant helping people, not collecting more money. I want to honor that dream, with you." Ethan looked at her curiously. Victoria smiled. "I want us to create the Lawson Hope Foundation. It will support single parents, foster children, and families who have been separated by tragedy." Ethan didn't answer immediately. He remembered every night he had skipped dinner so Noah could eat. He remembered wondering how he would pay rent, buying second-hand clothes, and pretending everything was fine so his son would never feel afraid. Finally, he nodded. "If our story can help someone else keep hope alive," he said, "then let's do it." Within weeks, the foundation began its work. Scholarships were awarded to children in foster care. Emergency housing was provided for struggling single parents. Missing child organizations received new funding and advanced search technology. News outlets praised Victoria's generosity, but she always corrected them. "This wasn't my idea alone," she would say. "My brother reminded me that kindness is the greatest investment anyone can make." One Saturday, the foundation organized its first family celebration in the very park where Ethan had found Lily. Hundreds of families attended. Children laughed as they played games, volunteers served food, and musicians filled the air with cheerful music. Standing beside the same wooden bench where everything had begun, Ethan felt someone tug on his sleeve. It was Lily. She held out the old teddy bear she had carried that rainy night. "I don't need this anymore," she said. Ethan smiled. "Why not?" "Because I know I'll never be lost again." Her words brought tears to his eyes. Nearby, Noah had become like the big brother Lily had always wanted. The two raced across the grass while Victoria watched with a smile that finally reached her eyes. As the sun began to set, Victoria stepped onto a small stage. "I have one more surprise," she announced. She invited Ethan forward and handed him a framed photograph. It showed the entire family together, Victoria, Lily, Noah, and Ethan, standing beneath a rainbow after a recent summer rain. Across the bottom of the frame was a simple inscription: "Family isn't always found by searching. Sometimes it's found by choosing kindness when no one is watching." The crowd applauded, but Ethan barely noticed. He looked at the faces in the photograph and realized that every painful chapter of his life had led him to this moment. If he had ignored a frightened little girl because he was tired. If he had decided someone else would help. If he had kept walking through the rain. None of this would have happened. He would never have found his sister. Noah would never have gained an aunt, a cousin, and a family that loved him unconditionally. And Lily might have spent one more terrifying hour believing she was alone. That evening, as the family walked home together through the park, Noah slipped his hand into Ethan's. "Dad," he said softly, "remember when you told me that doing the right thing always matters, even if nobody notices?" Ethan smiled. "I remember." Noah pointed toward the old bench. That little choice changed all our lives. Ethan looked at Victoria and Lily laughing together just ahead of them. He glanced up at the golden sky and silently thanked the mother who had raised him with compassion, the sister who had never stopped searching, and the little girl whose frightened smile had led him home. Sometimes the greatest treasure isn't hidden in a bank account or a mansion. Sometimes it's waiting in a single moment when a tired stranger chooses kindness over convenience. And in the end, Ethan learned that the richest people are not those who possess the most, but those who never stop opening their hearts to others. The end.